Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 26.4.1 to the public. iOS 26.4.1 is available around the world at the same time for everyone on all iOS 26 supported devices. However, if you're running iOS 26.5 betas, you won't have an update as you're on a newer version and you would need a computer in order to downgrade. Now, if you're wondering how to install the update and you haven't installed it already, you can find it by going into your settings, scrolling down to General, and then going to Software Update. You should see it here. If you're not seeing it, pull down to refresh or go back out and back in, and you should see the update here. Now, this particular update wasn't a huge install. You can see here it came in at 587.2 megabytes. That's on the iPhone Air, was about the same size on the iPhone 17 Pro, and also Apple released this alongside one other update with iPadOS 26.4.1. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So we can find that by going into our settings, going back into our software updates, going into more details, and then tapping on the version number here. As you can see, the build number is 23E254. And this particular update, when you have a 0.1 update, is less about features and more about bug fixes and security updates. For example, if we take a look at the release notes here, it says this update provides bug fixes for your iPhone, and then there's information about Apple security content we'll take a look at later. So again, less about features, but it is about bug fixes. And the first bug fix is, or at least the one we know about, is it fixes an iCloud sync bug that would stop iCloud from syncing along with Apple's own Passwords app. Many developers on Apple's own forum, you can see here, had the issue where it said iCloud Sync not working with iPhone works fine for Mac. So basically developers noticed that iCloud change notifications stopped going out to iPhones, and this has been fixed. So this should help with syncing. Maybe you were having some issues with syncing between apps, things like that. This should be resolved in this update. As far as other fixes, well, one thing has to do with clearing notifications. They clear right away now, where before it would take multiple button presses. So that seems to be resolved, but a few things seem like they haven't been resolved. So the overall experience is smooth. We'll talk about that in a moment, but certain things such as type to Siri, if you go in here and then you start to type maybe App Store, it should give suggestions. Typically you can type in here, type App Store, and it will open the App Store. So it knows to do that. But before you could just type app and it would open that up, or at least give suggestions, and you could tap it to open it up. So far, this has not been fixed, and it's still an issue in iOS 26.4. As far as any other issues, well, it could fix the battery issue. We'll talk about that in a moment as well, but there are no other specific fixes that we know about right away, and it will take a few days to know if anything else has been resolved, as Apple hasn't provided the notes to tell us what's fixed here. As far as any other bug fixes, well, Apple CarPlay seems to be working just fine. I haven't seen any complaints so far, but those could pop back up in a few days, so we'll talk about that in the weekend follow-up video. As far as the keyboard issues, well, Apple fixed most of those in iOS 26.4, but some people were having issues when they would type, where it would mistype, and Apple seemingly fixed that. So you would maybe type the letter R, but it would press T or E next to it, even though you pressed the correct letter. However, it seems good so far, so this is iOS 26.4.1 on iPhone Air. And you'll see it works okay. It didn't autocorrect iOS, but other than that, the actual typing was correct. Now, maybe this will improve, but again, it'll take a few days to notice that, so let me know in the comments below if it's fixed for you. Some people were having issues with the RCS issues, where sometimes it would send as RCS, then not send properly, so hopefully it's resolved there, but again, Apple hasn't mentioned this at all. As far as the wallpaper bug, let's take a look. It does seem to be fixed on iOS 26.5, but it looks like it desaturates here. So maybe they're holding off till iOS 26.5 to fix that, as it does seemingly appear to be fixed at least in iOS 26.5 betas. As far as security updates, well, if we go to Apple's security release website and scroll down, you'll see that they mention it here, but it says iOS 26.4.1 and iPadOS 26.4.1. This update has no published CVE entries. That doesn't mean they didn't update something as far as security, but it means they haven't published it. So we could see those in a few days, or maybe there's just nothing here. But typically they'll publish something a little bit later if maybe they don't want to share it right away just to make sure everything's secure. But again, that makes this a fairly important update. As far as other releases, well, iOS 26.5 Beta 2 is expected, hopefully as soon as next week. Typically, we'll have an update every couple of weeks, at least with the first betas. Of course, we had iOS 26.5 Public Beta 1 and iOS 26.5 Developer Beta 1 version 2 that released on Friday the 10th. So maybe we could see an update as soon as the 10th, but probably it's more likely on the 13th or 14th. That's typically what we'll see with Beta 2 there. Another few betas, and we'll probably see the public release sometime in early May. Of course, the big release we're waiting for is iOS 27, where we'll see that for the first time on June 8th at WWDC 2026, and that's where we'll see iOS 27, its features, hopefully stability, and of course, hopefully have the beta, with betas throughout the summer, public beta in July or towards the end of June, and then of course a public release sometime in September. That's typically what Apple does there. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.4.1, well, if you're on iOS 26.4, I would absolutely recommend it, as hopefully it fixes things such as battery and more over time, but it seems to be nice and fluid and fast overall. Things like ProMotion seems to be nice and smooth. So if we scroll up and down here, and even on older devices, it seems to be nice and smooth. So let me show you that. So on iPhone 11, you can see it here. I installed it on this device, and the overall experience is fairly smooth. Swiping through different pages, going into music for the first time here. We'll give it a second to load. Of course, that's dependent on the internet connection, but everything seems to be smooth and fast, much better than we've seen in the past with iOS 26. So that's great news. As far as overall heat, well, we do expect it to heat up a little bit after you first install it. It has to index in the background, and both devices that I've installed it on here are nice and cool, including the iPad as well. But let's go ahead and run benchmarks, see what we get as far as overall thermals, and see how they do. If we take a look at the iPhone Air on iOS 26.4, with the thermal camera here, we're right around 39 degrees Celsius. We've seen this as high as 45 degrees Celsius, so this is doing quite well. And on the iPhone 18 Pro, we're right around 35 degrees Celsius. So much cooler than what we've seen in the past. It seems like it's nice and cool, even though it just installed. Let's give it a moment and we'll take a look at benchmarks. Benchmarks completed, and we have 3,828 for single core and 9,805 for multi-core on the iPhone 17 Pro. It's a little bit lower, but well within the margin of error on the iPhone Air, and if we take a look at the history, you can see that here. So we're right where we should be on both devices, even better on the 17 Pro. So I think this is quite a good update, considering it just installed, and of course we'll have to take a few days to index. But let's take a look at battery life. Thanks to a viewer for sending in their battery life on an iPhone 17 Pro Max running iOS 26.4. It will take a few days to measure whether or not iOS 26.4.1 fixes any battery bugs other people had, where 50% said it was great, 50% had bad battery life. But you'll see here we have 7 hours and 15 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 52 minutes of screen idle time, and he used 67% of the battery. That's pretty decent overall, but he's had better battery life before. If we take a look at my battery life on iOS 26.5, we'll take a look here. We'll go to battery health. I'm at 100% capacity with 56 cycles, and my usage varies from day to day greatly. So you'll see 3 hours and 24 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 21 minutes of screen idle time, and I used 59%. So that's with iOS 26.5 Beta 1 version 2, and again 3 hours and 16 minutes here. So it definitely can improve, and of course it'll take a few days to measure that, and we'll talk about that in the weekend follow-up video. Now, as far as overall storage, let's take a look and see how it's going here. So within settings, if we go to general and then iPhone storage, scroll to the bottom, you'll see iOS is taking up 21.55 gigabytes. That's pretty normal overall, around 14 gigabytes for iOS, 7.53 gigabytes for Apple Intelligence, but those can vary greatly depending on how you use them. System data is only at 3.76 gigabytes. This can vary greatly, can go up to 60 gigabytes and come back down, but it just happens in the background and manages itself. But overall, I'd say it really hasn't grown in size, and of course your update just overwrites your old storage. So that's everything with iOS 26.4.1. Not a huge update, but hopefully it fixes a lot more bugs that we just don't see. And of course, we'll talk about it in the weekend follow-up video, and hopefully it improves battery for those that were having some issues with that. Let me know how it's going for you in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.